Well, welcome everyone for your SolidWorks webinar today. My name is Chatur. So I'm one of the field engineers for Intercat based in Sydney. And today I'll be primarily covering the modeling basics, at least one aspect of modeling basics, where we will be learning how to make modifications to your designs. So most of the time we might deal with designs which are already completed by another user, or you might download models off the internet which are designed in SolidWorks, let's assume, and so you might need to make some modifications to them. So essentially what you need to do once you download your components is you have to understand how it has been built from scratch, and then perform the modifications to it without causing any errors. So as you know, in SolidWorks, when you build models from scratch, you start from a sketch, select the right reference plane, and convert sketches to features, and you build layer by layer. So all these entities are generally linked with parametric relations. So you need to understand, first of all, how the feature tree organizes the sketches and features, and also how it maintains these parametric relations. So essentially what we need to do first of all is, just give me a moment. Yeah, there you go. So first of all, we have to have a look at the feature tree and understand something called parent-child relations, which will be indicated in various ways. We'll be focusing on that later on. And also, if you were to modify any features or sketches, you need to understand how the sketch relations are built as well. And there should be a way to interpret errors and warnings which may pop up in case a sketch relation or any feature relations are broken. And also, lastly, I will be covering uh, how you would save the file and how the references are maintained between drawings and parts or assemblies. Right. So let's actually go into the SolidWorks environment itself and have a look at an example. So here what I have is an SolidWorks model. Let's assume I've downloaded it off the internet and I'm not the one who created it. So a very good way of understanding how a model was built from scratch is by using this tool called Part Reviewer. So if you go to your Evaluate tab, there's an option called Part Reviewer, which can be used to uh, investigate or discretize your features and sketches step by step to understand in a better sense how it has been built. So when you enable this option Part Reviewer, what it does is it actually opens up a separate tab on your task pane with some arrow keys like that, and what you have to do is click on the step forward arrow. So when you do that, what happens is the software will explain to you step by step how this particular model has been built. So there's a rectangular sketch in this case, it's been converted to an extrude feature, and also the fillets have been added to it, and another vertical plate feature was created using this particular sketch. So this tool can even be used to explain to someone. If you have a colleague or any subordinate who needs to understand how you built this model and what's the basis on each sketch relation you have added, you can even use this part reviewer tool to explain to someone without you having to sit there and verbally explain it. So basically you can include comments for each sketch and feature, and this part reviewer is able to deliver that information to whoever is browsing through it. So it's a very good tool to understand how a certain model has been built from scratch. Right. So I'm going to exit this tool now. I'm going to step to the last bit. Right. All right. So what I need to do in this case is, first of all, I need to remove these holes. As you notice, it's a pattern feature. And also I need to make some modifications to the overall shape itself. So first of all, before I get rid of these holes, I need to understand the parent-child relation. So basically, I understand by looking at the feature tree, it lists out all the sketches and features I've or someone has added to this model. And as you know, every sketch you create in your SolidWorks model gets absorbed by features, and they get listed below the feature. Even though you can reuse it, the particular sketch you use for a feature will always be listed under the feature itself. If you don't like this sort of a display, and if you want to show a flat tree display, as in the sketches and features ordered to organize in the timely manner they have been created, you can always right click on the topmost level of your feature tree, go to tree display, and enable something called show flat tree view. So what it does then is it will simply take out the sketches from the features and will show them on the feature tree listed one after the other in the exact time manner you have created them in your model. So it's another option you could use. So I'm going to disable that for now. Uncheck that. All right. So what I would like to do first of all is get rid of this whole feature. So before removing it, I need to have a look at the feature tree and find out which features are driving this the two holes in my model. So basically there's a linear pattern feature and a counter bow feature. So one more thing you're going to notice is the moment you hover the mouse cursor above the counter bow feature, there will be some arrowheads pointing towards your feature. So basically there are two blue arrows pointing upwards, and it directs to the vertical plate feature and the base plate feature. And in the same time there's a purple arrow which is pointing in the downward direction, and it points to the linear pattern feature. So what does this essentially indicate? So basically these are called parent-child relations dynamically visualized. Starting from 2015 version of SolidWorks, the moment you right click on the topmost level of a feature tree, you are able to visualize this parent-child relations dynamically. So 2016 version had the child visualization enabled, but 15 onwards you can always have a look at the parent visualization. So even if you're using an older version to 2015, you can always visualize the parent-child relations by simply right-clicking on a certain feature and going on to the parent-child option available under the menu, the pop-up menu. So when you select it, it's distinctly going to show you what are the parent features of the selected entity. The counter bow feature has several parent features, that is the sketch and the base plate feature, which gives a reference, a dimensional reference to it, and also the vertical plate feature. So essentially it indicates that the counter bow feature will not, or it cannot exist without its parents. So basically base plate feature and the vertical plate features are the driving features for the counter bow feature. And at the same time, the counter bow feature has a child feature as well. For example, the linear pattern feature I have here was created using the counter bow feature as a reference. So basically it's a linear pattern of two instances of the counter bow feature. So it's a child feature of the counter bow. So if I were to go ahead and select the counter bow feature and hit the delete key on my keyboard, what's going to happen is there will be a pop-up box indicating to me all the dependent items of the selected feature, and I have the option of deleting the child features the moment I click the yes button. And you will notice the moment I hit yes, the linear pattern 1 feature will also get deleted, just like that. All right, so bear with me for a minute. All right, going back to my model. Right. Okay, so as you notice, the linear pattern feature got deleted along with the counter bow feature. So the next step is I need to ensure the shell feature, which is renamed to be wall thickness, shells out only the bottom section of my model. So if I were to temporarily suppress some of the features, I could simply drag the blue bar right at the bottom of your feature tree up again to understand how the model was built. So basically I want to change the position of my shell feature up to this level. I just want to shell out the bottom section or the base plate. I don't want to shell the vertical plate feature. So in that case, ideally what I need to do is I need to drag and drop this wall thickness feature up to this level soon after the base fillet feature. So how do I do that? In SolidWorks, it's always possible to drag and drop your features and reorganize them, but sometimes it doesn't allow you to do it. For example, if I try to drag and drop this wall thickness feature now, notice it goes above the rib under feature, but the moment it goes beyond the circular bows, there is a stop sign. It doesn't allow me to do it. Why is this happening? We need to investigate. Again, it goes back to the parent-child references. So if I were to move my mouse cursor onto the wall thickness feature, it indicates that the wall thickness has two parent features. One is the circular bows feature and also the base plate feature. So that's the reason why the wall thickness feature or the shell feature cannot exist at a level above the circular boost feature. So what I need to do in this case is I need to take out references from the wall thickness feature so that the arrow pointing to the circular boost feature will be removed. So let's have a look at the wall thickness feature itself. I'm going to edit the feature, and it indicates to me that the shell feature was created with 2 mm wall thickness specified, and also whoever created this had mentioned the bottom face of the base plate and two faces from the circular boost needs to be removed. So essentially there's a reference which links the shell feature to the circular boost feature, making this a parent of the shell feature. So I need to take these references out. So I'm going to click on these selected faces to deselect them. Click OK. Still it shows out the whole section. It's not done yet. I need to manually move this up. So if I were to move the arrow cursor onto the wall thickness feature, notice now it's no longer pointing to the circular boost feature. So I can freely drag it above the circular boost feature and drop it right below the base fillet. So if I have a look at the bottom section now, it only shells out the base plate. So at any point of time, if you cannot move the features up or down your feature tree, that's because they are maintaining parent-child relations, which needs to be addressed first. Okay, all right. So the next step is I would like to move this circle towards my left-hand side. So basically, I need to make this circular edge tangent to this line over here, this edge over here. So to do that, I need to edit the underlying features. So basically, I could move my mouse cursor to my vertical plate, right click on it, and I could edit the underlying sketch. So as you notice, the underlying sketch is already fully defined. My status bar says it's fully defined. So I don't need to define any more relations. But if I force in another sketch relation between these two entities, so if I click on this point, the joint between the straight edge and the arc, I can apply a tangent relation. Let's see what happens. So it tells me that now my sketch is over defined, and these yellow entities and the red entities are stopping the new relation from being added. So there's a conflict. So I need to get rid of one of them in order to satisfy the new relation I've added. So you could either do that manually, you could do trial and error and find out what's the best solution manually, or else the best thing you could do is simply move the mouse over to this warning message which says overdefined, click on it, and it'll immediately enable something called a sketch expert. So what this sketch expert tool does is it allows you to diagnose the problem with your sketch if you hit the diagnose button, and it'll tell you all the possible solutions you are able to execute. So for example, in this case, it tells me that there are 4 different solutions I could accept. So basically this is the first solution. It's asking me to get rid of the tangent relation itself, which I don't want to do. Let's have a look at the second solution. The second solution is to get rid of this linear dimension, which could be viable, but I would like to explore a bit more. Let's go to the third option. It tells me I need to get rid of this diameter, which I don't want to do. And the fourth solution, the last one, is get rid of the collinear relation between this edge and this particular edge. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go to my second solution, which the software suggested, to get rid of this linear dimension and accept it. Right. Click one more time. So what it did was it simply got rid of the linear dimensions, and it fulfilled or it actually successfully added the rest of the sketch relations without causing any more errors. So this is a very good way of fixing or applying modifications or executing modifications to your model without getting the software to cause furthermore errors, and it's a much more systematic approach. So sketch expert is very useful in that case. So I'm going to exit the sketch again. Right, so this is my model. It looks somewhat all right. So the next thing is I need to get this circular boost feature completely flushed with this face. So essentially I don't need it to be extruding out or protruding out like that. I need this face to be flushed with this face. To do that, I need to understand how this circular base feature was created. So if I go to the circular boost feature, it has a feature as well as a sketch. And I notice the sketch was created on some reference plane which is at an offset from this surface. So there's a reference plane on my feature tree I noticed called circular plane. So there are two options I have. I could either move this circular plane onto this face itself. That's one option I have. But the other is you can simply change the reference plane of this sketch. So you know that whenever you create a sketch, you have to pick a reference plane and sketch on it. So this is the reference plane they have used. I'll make it slightly larger so you could see it. So ideally what I want to do now is change the reference plane or the sketch plane of sketch 3 to this face. So to do that, you have to always come out of the edit sketch mode, right click on the sketch you need to switch, and the second option on the panel is edit sketch plane. So here you could simply pick a new reference plane. So it indicates a current reference plane, that is this one. So the target reference plane or the new reference plane I want to use is this face. Once you select it, it'll be added to your selection manager there. Click on the green check mark and you'll notice the sketch was successfully shifted. Alright, so that's the way of switching the sketch plane. So switching sketch plane is again useful even if you want to change the overall orientation of your model. So you know that when you hit the space bar, you get the standard views, the top view, the front view, and the left and right views, etc. So these are decided by the first sketch you create and the reference plane you use. For example, if you have sketch something on the top plane and if the top view looks like that, but instead you want to switch this to the front view, what you could do is you can change the sketch plane of that underlying sketch to the front plane from the top plane simply by right clicking on the sketch and going on to edit sketch plane. Right, so you could actually explore this feature and you'll find out much more advanced applications you could use it for. All right, so the next thing I need to do is I need to change the position of this rib from this edge to the center of this cylinder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to immediately access the rib feature, which is called rib under. It's an extrude feature rather, and I want to edit the underlying sketch of it. So let's go to edit sketch and I'm going to make the view normal. So it's always good practice to change the sketch plane normal to your view angle. So you could do that by pressing Ctrl and 8 on your keyboard, or when you press the space bar, you get this option or normal to. Alright, so always use that option. Alright, so as I notice, this sketch is fully defined. So if I were to drag this rectangle inwards, it wouldn't move. So I need to first of all get rid of a sketch relation which locks it in position. So it currently has 3 sketch relations, as you notice. So for some reason, if the sketch relations don't show up, you could go to the show hide items and enable or disable the visibility of sketch relations. Right. So one more good thing about the sketch relations is the moment you move the mouse cursor over it, it highlights all the entities belonging to that relation. So for example, if I move the mouse cursor onto this collinear relation, it indicates that one edge from the rectangular shape as well as an edge from the model itself is being used for this collinear relation, which incidentally locks this rectangle in position. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that relation, make sure it turns light blue, and hit the delete key on my keyboard, which will unlock its position. So basically I could drag this vertex or any edge now and it moves in the horizontal direction. So I'm going to add a few more modifications to it. I'm going to get rid of these dimensions for now, and I'm going to add a tangent arc between these two entities. And it for future references, it's always best to keep the original references and convert them to construction lines if you don't want to use them. Obviously you can delete them, but if you feel that you might use them in the future, it's always best practice to convert them into a construction line instead of deleting. Alright, so you won't lose the old references. So that's what I did now. So the straight line was converted to a construction geometry, which won't be considered in the feature. Now it's going to be a curved front for this rib, and I'm going to apply a larger radius. and another dimension needs to be added between the silhouette edge and my point there. So basically you can even pick a silhouette edge, or you can even pick a face. So that's what I'm going to do now. There you go. And you can simply add a distance between the two. Right. One more handy tool with SolidWorks is, for some reason, if you got the dimension in the wrong direction, you can always flip the direction of the dimension. For example, for some reason, if you had added the dimension this way accidentally, if you want to get it in the inward direction, you can always select the dimension, make sure it turns light blue, and you'll have this option to reverse the direction. So this was a 2016 feature of SolidWorks, and if you're using an older version, unfortunately you'll have to recreate the dimension. Right. Okay, so the next step is I need to somehow center the midpoint of this arc, or the center point of the arc, with reference to the center of this cylinder. So every time you create a fillet or any circular entity or any cylindrical entity in SolidWorks, it always produces something called a temporary axis. You don't need to create an axis again from scratch. You just simply go to your hide show items and enable temporary axis. So what it does is, everywhere you have a cylindrical face, it'll mark the center of the cylinder with a temporary axis like that. You can use these for references. To show you an example, if I want to lock the center of the arc with reference to the center of the cylinder, all I need to do is simply pick the center of the cylinder, which is represented by this temporary axis, hold the control key, select the center point of the arc, and make them coincident. Alright, so my sketch is now fully defined. And after that, as you notice, it's perfectly fixed. Right. So this was a very simple example of how to make design modifications without or minimizing errors rather. Right. So in this case, of course, what we did was we completely modified the underlying features in order to match it with the desired shape we want. But sometimes it could be that you end up with parts like this. For example, what I would like to do here is I need to cut off or get rid of this section. So I need this section to be completely open. So if we were to go ahead and have a look at the vertical plate sketch now, it's quite a bit of a tedious task to include this arc again in the picture and also modify this base sketch itself. So instead of doing it that way, obviously we can do it, but instead of doing it that way, you could simply create a cut feature to get rid of this section here. But the issue here is, due to the presence of these fillets, you can't really figure out how the original shape looks like, original shape of that face. So it's always best practice to drag this blue bar up to a level where the fillets are not present. For example, it doesn't delete it from the model, it temporarily suppresses it, and it allows you to add a feature above the fillet features. That's what I did now. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to create a cut feature on this surface. So most of you might know that there's an option called convert entities under sketch tools, where it enables the user to extract the outline of a selected face or a selected set of edges. So if I select this particular face, first of all I need to make this my active sketch plane. So I'm going to use this pop-up bar, or you can even click on your sketch tab and go to sketch, which enables a new sketch on the selected surface. So the next step is I need to convert the outline of this face into a new sketch. So if I enable this convert entities button, it'll ask me which entities I would like to convert. I could individually pick these edges, or I could select the whole face itself and right, click on this check mark. What happens is, you'll notice it actually converted that to a loop of edges. Afterwards, what I need to do is simply go to my features tab and go to extruded cut, and I'm going to cut through all, simply getting rid of that extra geometry. So if you try to achieve the exact same shape by editing this vertical plate sketch, it is possible, but it's a bit of work. So again, you need to find out how the overall shape is going to look like, because all the other entities which are present after the vertical plate, such as rib under and circular bows, which adds references to this overall shape, are not present. So you need to pre-calculate them or define them in order to achieve that shape. So sometimes it's better to add a new feature and simply get rid of existing geometry than modifying existing geometry. So it's always best to first of all go through your model by using evaluate and part reviewer to understand how it has been built, and then decide what's the fastest way to modify it. All right, so these were some very basic examples, and if you have attended the SolidWorks Essentials training, you may have already covered this. And one more thing I want to show you next is how to overcome errors and warnings which SolidWorks shows up. All right, before I get there, let me actually check these messages I've got from some of them. Bear with me for a minute. That's all right. Okay, so let me close this model now. Go to Windows and close all. I'm going to open up another model which contains a bunch of errors. So it's quite possible that you may have already encountered this sort of a model, or if you haven't, you will eventually, because in certain cases you will find out features and sketches having warnings and errors attached to them. For example, in this case, you'll notice there is a bunch of features and sketches present in your model, but you can't see any geometry present in the workspace. So this could happen due to a user unintentionally deleting a reference geometry or modifying a feature which already has sketch relations included in them, and they might not realize it's causing some repercussions, like this. For example, some of the features related to this feature tree are having problems because of missing geometry and missing sketch relation references. So to find out what exactly is wrong with this model, you can simply right click on the topmost level and go to this option called what's wrong. So it'll list out all the problems with your model. So basically each error and warning is explained, and now we're going to find out how to interpret them and fix them. All right, so then trying to figure out all the problems in one go, it's always best you solve one by one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first of all enable this flat tree view, tree display, go to flat tree view, and then drag this mouse cursor to the blue bar over here, and drag it all the way up to the first error you have. So it indicates that this main feature has a problem. So if I right click on it, and if I go to what's wrong, or if I simply have a look at this warning message which pops up, this is a 2017 feature, older versions didn't have this message pop up. It tells me that the sketch cannot be used for a feature because an endpoint is wrongly shared by multiple entities. Essentially, there's a problem with the sketch, and also it has some issues with it. So what I need to do in this case is I can simply go to the edit sketch option, which will take you to the related sketch, and it seems okay to me at a glance, but there could be some micro level issues. So if you can't really figure out what's the problem with this sketch at a glance, what you should do is go to this option called repair sketch. It's listed under your sketch tab. So the moment you click on repair sketch, what happens is the software will show you by using a magnifying glass where the problem is. So the first problem seems to be at this corner. It's not very clear. So what I need to do is simply move the mouse towards the center of the circle and spin the mouse wheel until it zooms in to the problem. So I notice that there's a micro level gap between these two entities. 0.005 millimeters is the gap. So I'm gonna delete these extra bits which are extruding out, and simply merge the entities the way I want. So that is fixed. So I could click on the next arrow. So it shows me that there's another problem here at this corner. I'm going to zoom in a bit more and delete this extra bit which is jutting out, and I'm going to refresh. So the next is, it tells me a small entity, is it intentional, and it doesn't seem to be within this sketch. So what I need to do is simply close this repair sketch dialog box and press the F key on my keyboard, or alternatively you can go to zoom to fit on the top orientation menu, and I immediately notice there's a sketch entity which had been created far away from the origin, and most likely it's an unintentional um, action. So basically I'm going to draw a rectangle around it to select all the entities which I don't need and hit the delete key, and the moment I exit my sketch, you will notice extrude both feature is now created properly without an issue, and also the main feature does not have an error attached to it anymore. So that is essentially solved. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go down 2 levels, and it shows me the cut extrude feature which has gotten created. It seems to have created the cut extrude feature, but it seems to have a warning attached to it. So if I right click on it and go to what's wrong, it tells me that the sketch contains dimensions or relations to the model which no longer exist. So it's giving me some suggestions. Delete the dangling sketch relations, or um, edit the sketch itself to restore the geometry. So what I need to do first is have a look at the related sketch, edit it, edit sketch rather, and have a look at the existing sketch relations. So if I have a look at the current sketch, you'll notice some of the dimensions are in black and some of the sketch relations are in a brighter green, but one sketch relation is in a darker green shade, which indicates a dangling sketch relation. So another way of finding out the dangling sketch relations is by using this option, display delete relations. The moment you select it, it'll show you all the relations in the existing sketch or the current sketch, and you can even filter out only the dangling sketch entities, which shows me immediately there's a collinear relation which has dangling references. So all of you know that how a collinear relation works. So basically if you sketch a line, and if you were to select that line and another edge and make them collinear, it shares the same axis, it gets aligned. But in this case what has happened is a collinear relation was added to this sketch with a certain geometry, but the geometry is no longer present, so it has a missing reference. So ideally I need to find a new reference to replace the missing reference. So I'm going to go to my display delete relations, filter out the dangling relation, find out that collinear relation, which will show me the related entities. So basically it shows me the line 1, the moment I select it, it gets highlighted, was related to another entity called line 8, probably an geometric edge which is dangling, which is missing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a new reference. I'm going to pick this edge from my model and hit this replace button, so that the collinear relation now turned to a brighter green, indicating a successfully added relation. So the moment I exit it and exit the sketch, you'll notice the warning message simply goes away from the cut extrude feature, indicating there's no problem or warning attached to it. So I'm going to go down a level. The shell feature, it seems to have worked fine. So the reference plane seems to have worked fine as well. The sketch level is alright. The rib feature is okay. So one by one I need to explore. Alright. So the cut extrude feature and its related sketch seems to have some problem. So if I move the mouse over to the first warning, it tells me that the reference plane used by this sketch, this circular sketch you see, is missing and cannot be accessed. So you can use the command edit sketch plane to add a new reference plane for this sketch. So essentially what has happened is the sketch 3, this circle was drawn on some reference plane and someone may have deleted it accidentally, and now it shows a warning indicating a missing reference. So we discussed about how to change reference planes a few minutes back. All you have to do is simply right click on the sketch, go to edit sketch plane and select a new reference plane. It shows you where the old sketch plane was, but now you can select a new reference. I'm going to pick this face, click OK, and now it got switched to this front face over here, creating the feature successfully without any issues. That's all. Let's go a bit further down. Right, so this sketch 6 has a problem. The sketch 6 is related to the cut extrude 4 feature, that is this one. So if I have a look at it again, it tells me that if I right click on it and go to what's wrong, this sketch contains dimensional relations to model geometry which no longer exist. So immediately I can say that the dimension here 9, it's highlighted in a darker green shade indicating a missing reference. So I'll edit the sketch first and have a look at the dimension. I could even go to display digit relations to understand it better. Go to dangling. It shows me this distance dimension has two entities, the arc, which is already present here, and a line, which is missing. So I need to find a reference for that. So ideally it should be 9 millimeters from the bottom. So go to the line 6, which is dangling now, and pick a new reference. I'm going to pick this edge and hit this button to replace it. So it got sorted out. Click on the check mark, exit, and there you go, the warning goes away. So similarly, you could go further down, and my circular pattern seems to be okay. Yeah, so this extrude cut feature, these two seems to have a problem. So ideally what should happen is these circles should be aligned if you need to send a shaft through any apparatus through. So I'm going to have a look at the sketch itself and have a look at it to understand what's wrong with it. It says again some of the sketch relations are dangling and I need to fix that. Go to edit sketch and it immediately shows me that one of the existing co-radial relations is dangling and also a concentric relation is dangling as well. All I have to do is again go to display digit relations. Fortunately, I have references which could be linked to these dangling relations. So find out which entity is dangling. So it shows me that if I go to this co-radial relation first, arc 3, that is this circle, is fully defined. I need to find a replacement for arc 4, which is missing. Select the circle in front of it, arc 4, select in front of it, and hit the replace button. It gets fixed. It gets realigned as you notice. So similarly, the concentric relation can be fixed as well. Arc 5 is the dangling one. I'm going to select a new reference and hit the replace button. So that is fixed and exit it. So when it comes to fillets, of course, sometimes it could be tricky to find out what's the best way to fix it or what's the most appropriate way of fixing it. So it says some geometry and the radius values you have used for the fillet is causing a problem. So all you have to do is, in this case, is simply select the fillet with the warning, go to what's wrong, and for this particular instance, there's an option called Feature Expert, which can analyze your model and the feature radius you have added for the fillet and group them in such a way the final desired shape can be added. So I'm going to click on this Feature Expert option, and you'll notice at the moment I have only 3 fillets, but the moment I click on Feature Expert, the software finds out the best way to add it, and you'll notice 3 extra fillets were added in order to satisfy the final desired shape. So that's another tool which you can use for chamfers and fillets, which is quite handy, especially if you don't want to spend time troubleshooting it manually. All right. So these are some of the common techniques you could use to fix existing errors in your model, or any of the actions you perform might cause these errors to pop up, and now we know how to fix them and we know how to interpret them rather, so you can solve them out in a much more systematic manner without randomly performing actions. All right. So before I finish off, I want to cover one more thing, especially when it comes to working with similar models. So for example, there could be an instance where you have an existing model with a drawing attached to it. So drawing references, assembly references is a big topic, but I'll be covering only this bit so that it could be handy to you, especially if you're making modifications to existing models. For example, I have a drawing here created for a part called idler arm. So whenever you right click on any of the views and go to its properties, you can find out the location of its related model. It tells me that a part called idler arm is being used for this drawing. So even if I save this document as, if I go to save as and give it a different drawing name, and then if I go ahead and change the underlying model, Bear with me for a minute. Yeah, if I open up the model and if I change this dimension to, let's say, 50, what's going to happen is the drawing is going to change as well. So let's assume that you need to have two separate drawings for a version of this model, which is 75 millimeters in length as well as 50 millimeters in length. So in that case, what you need to do is, let me go back and let me undo the changes I made and close it and close the idle arm. So let's go back. This is the original file. What you need to do in this case is you need to go to file and save as. Don't just save the drawing. There's an option called include all reference components. For example, let's assume I want to create a new drawing called idle arm new, which is linked to a part, exactly the same part but a slight variation, and the part should be called idle arm new as well. So what you do in this case is you go to your save as dialog box and use this option called include all reference components, which gives you some more advanced features. For example, here it will show you the current drawing as well as the paths which are being referenced by this drawing. So in this case, if you want to call it a different name, all you have to do is simply select the two entities, hold the control key, and you could add a suffix or a prefix to it. So in this case, what I'm going to call is I'm going to add a suffix to it, put an underscore and put new, apply, and you'll notice the name got changed, which gets highlighted in green, and go to save all. So what the software does now is it actually created a new drawing file called idle arm new, and if you have a look at the part or the view reference, right click on the view and go to properties, it is linked to a part file called idle arm new SLD part. So it essentially broke the reference from the original part. So for example, if you were to go ahead and modify this part now, I'm going to change it to 50. That's my new dimension. Save it, close the drawing, or go back to the original drawing or the new drawing I created. Notice the views have changed now with the right dimension, and I also have the option of opening the original idle arm drawing, which is still at 75 millimeters. So this is one more option you could use if you are uh, making a variation of your existing models, and if you want to create the exact same drawing for that variation as well, you can use this option. All you have to do is simply go to file, save as. Don't just save the drawing, make sure you include all reference components. You could add a suffix or a prefix, or use advanced options to even add it to a different folder, or even replace the existing text of the file name string with a newly specified value. So that's one more technique you could use. Fine. All right, so that's about it for the webinar today. So what I would like to do now is open up for Q&A.